right.
All right. Jackie, give me the thumbs up if we are live. All right. What's happening, everybody? And happy 420 to each and every one of you. And thank you so very much for joining us on this ACF United webinar. And you know what? We're going to get started in just a few minutes, but before we do, we want to encourage everybody to collaborate on this webinar. You're going to use the chat bar down at the bottom of your screen to collaborate. Now, if you want to ask a question, there's what we call the Q&A bar as well. So that being said, please bear this in mind. This is something that everybody wanted to see, hear, and touch, and probably taste at the same time, but we'll talk about that a little later. But bottom line is this, folks. We've received well over 100 questions in advance. So if we do not get to your question that you post, please forgive us. We're going to do our best to get to it. So that being said, let's go ahead and kick things off. All right? So happy 420 once again to each and every one of you, and thank you so very much for all of the attendees that are joining us. We have people from Canada, the UK, and the Bahamas, and that right there is absolutely awesome. You spoke, ACF listened. The chefs in the ACF were polled, and it had said that cannabis edibles and beverages were listed as the top 2 trends of the year. According to the 2019 What's Hot survey, when the National Restaurant Association polled you all. So we are doing a cannabis seminar here on this beautiful ACF United webinar platform. So times are changing. And according to recent studies, 66% of Americans, they say that they are in support of legalizing marijuana nationwide. So cannabis has moved onto the dinner table, and the opportunity for chefs to enter this industry is growing. We know that our food service industry is facing an unprecedented time right now, and it's a crisis that we're all in. But bottom line is this: we've all been impacted, and we need to look at what's coming down the pipe for the future. And the future will be bright, and there will be new opportunities. And for some of you, maybe your new career will be in cannabis cuisine or infused events. Here is a legal disclaimer, folks, okay? We are not doctors, we are not lawyers, we are chefs. And we will not be inferring any legal or medical advice during this webinar. Just simply sharing the opinions of those chefs who are currently working in this industry in the US, and also our great guests from Canada, where cannabis is already federally legal, right? Absolutely. All of our panelists can be considered disruptors for positive change and education as it pertains to cannabis. And now, it is my great pleasure to introduce one of my favorite disruptors for a positive change. She is the Director of Strategic Partnerships with the American Culinary Federation, Jackie Pressinger. Jackie, I think it's high time we get down to business, don't you think?
I'm ready. Thank you so much, Rocco. I appreciate it, and thank you very much for being my special co-host today for this webinar. I love you. So a little known fact about me, I have been researching culinary cannabis for quite some time. And so it's very special for me to have you all here today so that some of the experts that we have on this webinar can address your questions. But instead of reading all our amazing panelists' bios, let's have them introduce themselves. So chefs, if you could please tell the viewer some highlights about yourself and where you're working in cannabis. If there's a lot we need to cover, so if you can do this in about 30 seconds, that would be great. So Chef Brandon, may we kick it off with you?
Sounds good. What's up, y'all? My name is Chef Brandon Allen. I am currently the Director of Research and Development for Trichome Institute. Trichome Institute does online and live cannabis education, various courses ranging from bud tender training to consultant training all the way to the Cannabis Sommelier. I'm also the first ever High Times top cannabis chef. It was actually 420 weekend 3 years ago that I earned that title, and I'm classically trained from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, where I had an awesome opportunity to do an apprenticeship with an Olympic culinary chef, Chef Sean Culp.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And Chef Brent, if you wouldn't mind telling us about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Brent Leitch from Toronto, Canada. I've been culinary my entire life, Michelin restaurants all over the world, including French Laundry, worked in Sicily. Worked in Hong Kong, Thailand. I love cooking. I love cannabis. I was teaching at George Brown, probably our top culinary school here. And then I found Tamara, actually, who I work with there. and they run a cannabis cooking company as it's legal in Canada. Fully legal compliant cooking classes. You bring in your cannabis. We show you how to infuse it, talk about dosing, different methods to infuse it, different foods that you can infuse. So that's it. We just want to educate the public and normalize it. So that's us.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here all the way from Canada. And Chef Unika, please tell us about yourself.
Yes, hi, my name is Unika. I am originally from Trichome, Washington. I've been cooking with cannabis for nearly 10 years now. I started a dinner series several years ago and received a bit too much attention. And so I have a lot of background information in dealing with government agencies and receiving fines and whatnot on the wrong side of the tracks. But I've also been fortunate enough to have cooked with the Super Troopers. I've been featured a few times in Dope Magazine and a few other publications. And recently was on Viceland's 3rd season of Bon Appetit. So I had an opportunity to be on 2 episodes of that, and it was definitely an experience. I consider myself very blessed to be a part of this industry, and I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this day that I could sit down and talk to other people in the industry that actually are into food and really have serious culinary questions about cannabis. So I'm super excited. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And Andrew.
Yeah, hi. My name is Andrew Freedman. I am known as the Cannabis Sommelier. I teach people how to pair wine and cannabis and craft beer, how to cocktail with cannabis. I throw cannabis fine dining events all over North America. I am the Director of Retail Development for a cannabis group. Yeah, you'll learn lots more about me. Check me out on my YouTube channel to learn more. There's hundreds of videos. I'll put that up in the chat.
Fabulous. Okay, and I know that we can't see you, Chef David, but if you can hear us, if you can tell, because I know you're at work right now, but if you could let us know about yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Topian. I am the executive chef for Commonwealth Alternative Care. We are located in southeastern Massachusetts. We are a fully integrated seed to sale cannabis company. We have about approximately 200,000 square feet of growing and production space, as well as a dispensary. Bulk of our products, we wholesale to approximately 50% of the dispensaries that are in the state of Massachusetts. I graduated the Culinary Institute back in 1988, so I am an old timer, but I'm well experienced. And I've worked with actually Jackie at the Ritz-Carlton in Boston. It was a wonderful time. I also did some research and development for a wholesale pastry company, and we provided products for Trader Joe's, Whole Foods. So past 2.5 years, I've been cooking with cannabis. So anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
Well, we will get to that. And just of note too, when I worked with Chef David, I was petrified of him. Oh my God. Okay, and Tamara.
Hi everyone, my name is Tamara Lilien. I am a cannabis sommelier and educator and curator. Last year, I was actually selected from 25,000 individuals to sit on the world's first cannabis curation committee, where I'm actually paid to smoke and evaluate cannabis. So that has been a really fun and exciting opportunity. I am also the director of education for the Cannabis Cooking Company, along with Chef Brent Leitch, where we teach people how to cook with cannabis safely, legally, and responsibly. And I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm happy to answer any questions about anything to do with cannabis and pairing as well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Chef Schopp.
Hello, everyone. I am a full-time baking and pastry arts culinary instructor for Virginia Western Community College. I own a catering company and have been enjoying cannabis for some 40 plus years, both edibles and flower. I would like to congratulate the ACF for taking this on. I think years ago we started looking at this, and it was a bit taboo, still might be a bit taboo, but I think it's brilliant. I think it's an incredible budding industry, no pun intended. And it's important that the community gets together and talks, and we educate and we do things responsibly, and legally, of course. So excited to be a part of this.
Well, I can't imagine a better panel or a better group of individuals to spend 420 with. So thank you all for being here. Let's get into the questions. So this first one will be for Chef Brandon. Many of the viewers today have never seen, never mind tried cannabis. Or maybe they smoked a joint back in college 30 years ago, but they have an interest in trying cannabis cuisine and cannabis infused edibles. So one of the questions that we got was, you know, what exactly is an edible?
What is an edible? The way we define an edible at Trichome is basically anything that is infused with cannabis that you can swallow. It's that simple. You can infuse anything from beef jerky to popcorn to the typical pot brownie to cocktails, as we have some people on here, to, you know, a fancy terrine, to anything you can imagine can be infused, because of the fact that cannabinoids can come in different forms, and they can emulsify or they can dissolve into different carriers. And it's really simple to apply that to pretty much any dish, any recipe, anywhere. So in the sense of what is an edible, it's something you swallow and it comes in food form, but this also includes things like sublingual applications or tinctures that you would put under your tongue. Most people don't hold them under their tongue for long enough. So what happens is they end up swallowing it. So the same type of effect that your liver basically does to metabolize the various things that you're consuming, the different cannabinoids, mainly being THC, has a much different effect than it does through inhalation. And without getting into all the science of it, when you inhale THC, it is primarily delta-9 THC that is making you feel high. But when you ingest it or swallow it, it is primarily 11-hydroxy THC and delta-9 THC together. And 11-hydroxy THC is significantly stronger than delta-9. It lasts a lot longer, and it takes a heck of a lot longer to kick in, because if you smoke or inhale, sometimes before you even exhale, you can feel the effects, whereas an edible takes upwards of 45 minutes up to even 2 hours, depending on your metabolism, for it to kick in. And there's so many different variables as to what could happen with your experience with that edible that really all comes down to the individual. So if your friend's comfortable with a 10 milligram dose, I would not think that if it's your first edible experience, you're gonna have the same experience. So one thing we always say with edibles is you have to go, well, with anything with cannabis, is to go super low and slow. We recommend a 2.5 to 5 milligram dose within a 24-hour period, and that's it. If you don't feel anything, don't take any more. Don't do what I did and get way too high with your first edible experience, and just go low and slow. So what is an edible? It's something you're swallowing that's infused in food, as well as tinctures, even a capsule. Again, if you're swallowing anything and it's infused with cannabis, it is an edible.
Okay, great. So just so we can lay the foundation a little bit more for those who might be viewing, who again might not have as much experience as some of the cannabis chefs who are viewing. Tamara, I was wondering if you could kind of give us a brief overview of what THC versus CBD is, since there's a lot of confusion in that area.
Of course. So when we're talking about THC and CBD, we're talking about the primary cannabinoids that are present in cannabis. So different people will describe them differently. However, it's important to know that both of them are psychoactive in that they change our baseline state. However,
yes, I'm so glad you said that. Sorry.
So not only does it affect our baseline state, but it actually also elicits the high experience. So feelings of euphoria and all of the other elements, that go along with getting high. So, and I will just also note, they are two of many of the cannabinoids present in cannabis. And although there is value in separating them, they are most valuable when they work in conjunction, because that is something that we refer to as the entourage effect, which is the notion that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So when all of these cannabinoids are working synergistically in concert, they will actually allow for a more beneficial therapeutic or even recreational experience.
Wonderful. That helps a lot. And we're going to get into more of the cooking and things and what everyone sort of does on a day-to-day basis. But there is a term that I know that we'll probably end up using. So I just want to also clarify this term as well. And Chef Brent, I was wondering if you could let us know a little bit more about the importance of decarboxylation.
So decarbing your cannabis, it's sort of the first step in what you're generally going to do when you are making an infusion. So essentially we need two things to decarb. It's basically heat and time. So obviously if you're smoking a joint, that's going to happen immediately because it's such a high temperature. But when we do it in a culinary sense, what we do is bake it off in the oven. I did about 6 different times and temps last week, and normally 240 for half an hour, and I actually went 290, and I did that for 20 minutes, and I actually found I got a 91% extraction rate. So that's going to basically activate it. So that is where you first do that, and then generally we make a fat infusion after that, butter, coconut oil, whatever it may be. But then you can also do a passive infusion where you would just grind up your raw cannabis and put it directly into the flour or fat. So there you'll actually preserve a lot of the terpenes and the smells and flavors in the cannabis. Whereas when you decarb it or bake it in the oven, you actually lose a lot of those flavors, but it lends an almost sort of roasted or toasted nutty flavor to it. And again, you're going to get a higher activation. So it depends on what you're after, if it's more the flavor or more the THC or CBD content. But that's kind of the basis of decarb.
And I'll just add that Brent is using a machine called a T-check that he uses to assess the different outcomes of the decarbs at different temperatures.
So yeah, it's a little device, about 750 Canadian. You basically take your fat infusion, your clarified butter, and then you put it in and use a spectrometry. So just to tell you, so it's accurate within, I think it's at 15%. So not always spot on, but there is a consistency to it that if you use it over and over, you'll have a pretty, product that you can understand what it is. So.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And for those who are diving into, starting into culinary cannabis or edibles, Chef Schopp, I'm going to come to you. Are there any special equipment or tools or anything that anyone needs to get started, or can they start tonight?
Well, I think you can start just with your oven or toaster oven. I think our sous vide machines are lending themselves really nicely to extracting and infusing different things. So if you have a sous vide, I think there's a couple of different methods, either infusing the fat or doing a dry decarb on that works too. But I don't think you need much of anything. Some flour probably, or a concentrate.
All right, great. That's great news. And Chef Unika, I know that you had mentioned being on some of the cannabis TV shows, and I know that you do a lot of dining experiences. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your cuisine or about what a dining experience would look like under your care.
Sure. My cuisine is soul foods. I'm also kind of known for cooking more plant-forward dishes because I believe that people should eat more vegetables. I love meat, but I think that, as a whole, we should eat more vegetables. So I try and incorporate that as well. But for me, a dinner, you should start off slow. For those who are more familiar with cannabis, I have other things that they can add. You can enhance different butters and gravies and salad dressings and things like that so that people can tailor their experiences that way. But I really try to focus on educating people about cannabis, about terpenes, and how to incorporate them more in their day-to-day life just to make it a part of an overall health routine. To get those benefits that go along with the whole endocannabinoid system. It doesn't take a lot is what people learn a lot of times when they attend one of my dinners. A little bit goes a long way. As one of the other chefs was saying, 10 milligrams, if one of your friends is good with that, don't start there because that's really a lot more cannabis than you think it is. So.
All right, wonderful. Well, I appreciate that. I could go for some infused soul food right now myself. Let me see. So I'm going to come to you, Andrew, and hopefully get a better sense of what a day in the life of your business looks like, and how are you helping to educate those, and how do you see how these could be opportunities for some of the chefs in the US as well?
Yeah, so the Cannabis Sommelier idea is really easy. It's based in hustle and content. The easiest thing that I can say is that I make content to drive a message, and through that content, I use a personal brand to build the opportunity to create the leverage that I hope for in any of these industries. So at first, it started as a way for me to pontificate about cannabis and wine and really help people with the vocabulary. And now it's evolved into so much more. So, you know, my day, because of starting in cannabis culinary and starting with cannabis and wine and craft beer pairings, I ended up so much further and ended up consulting for a lot of places. So right now, I mentioned before, I'm opening some cannabis retail stores in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So I'm doing the educational stuff there, and doing as the director of retail development, we have a really cool program where we've actually partnered with Lobo Genetics, and they can test your genetics to tell you how cannabis will interact with your body. There's reasons why all of us metabolize cannabis differently, have different cannabis experiences. So they're an incredible company. Just to plug them quick, check out Lobo Genetics. And then, yeah, through the day, it's creating ideas on how I can teach anybody, not just chefs, how to use cannabis in their day-to-day, anything from making videos about, you know, cannabis cocktails to infusing mayonnaise, so that you can take every level. And one big thing is to remember for everybody, just as I can stab it in there, is don't overthink infusion. Olive oil is a great base ingredient for so many amazing dishes. Yeah, so my days are crazy. I make a podcast, I produce videos, I'm out hustling and bustling. It's fantastic that culinary and food and bev took me to a spot where I could be a business person.
I love it. I love it. And I'm seeing the chat. Everyone knows what time it is.
Oh,
on the East Coast. So, yes, happy, everyone. All right. So, hopefully some of our viewers are enjoying themselves as well while they're learning. So this brings me to Chef David. If you could let me know, because you're a little bit different. You came from the fine dining side, and now you're in the manufacturing side. So I think that's an interesting concept for to share with some of the chefs. And I know you're at work right now, so like I said, we don't have your video because you're in a lab. But take us through your day and what some of the products are that you prepare.
Sure. So most of the products that we currently do, I did formulate all myself. And these were proven recipes that I've worked with in the past. Give one instance is our fruit chew. It's not like a regular gummy or a gummy bear texture. It's more like a French gelée type of fruit chew. So it's a clean product. It's a pectin-based product. It's considered a paleo product as well. So all these clean aspects of the product help market it as well. We're also doing drinks. We do a lemon lime shot that's sweetened with a low glycemic apple sweetener. So we are conscious of the diabetics that are out there, because not so many people that can come in can just grab a confectionery that's infused with product. We also cater to these individuals that can't have the sugar, and this product, these two drinks that we have that we developed, fits their needs. We also do some Belgian dark chocolate drops. We're doing a Nature Bite, which is like a granola based product. So it's going to have dates, and it's going to have walnuts and pecans and honey, and then it's going to be infused. And these products are starting to become more and more popular now. So it's a lot of what I did in the past in the R&D situations that I was at at a local company that really honed my skills to make it more conscious of the ingredients that we're putting in these products as well.
All right. Well, and although those all sound very, very tempting, I know that one of the challenges with the current laws are that you can't ship out of state. Is that correct? So if people happen to be in Massachusetts, I believe they can buy them recreationally, or can you tell a little bit about that?
Yes. Currently, we produce.
Sure, everyone's on mute.
So there's approximately 75 dispensaries in the state of Massachusetts, and we supply half of those dispensaries. So they make some products on their own, and then they supplement filling shelves with our products as well. So you can only consume our products within the state of Massachusetts. And keep in mind that all states are different. So what I'm producing here on premise, there are states that you cannot produce edibles on premise, and they have to be shipped in by a second party manufacturer.
Got it. Very, very interesting. Okay, so reading the messages that are coming in, and this was something that had come up a lot with those that were emailing in advance as well. Chef Brandon, I'm wondering if you can address, there's a lot of questions coming in of people saying, what kind of cannabis do I buy? So do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so with Trichome Institute and the interpreting program, the Cannabis Sommelier program, we basically provide people with the knowledge so that they can evaluate the quality and predict the psychotropic effects of flower based off of physical and aromatic evaluation. So one of the big things that we explain is the strain names don't matter, okay? So at the end of the day, if I were to give everyone that's listening a clone from a mother plant, so you're basically getting like a little leaflet, and if I were to give everyone all across the world and let you plant it however you'd like, okay? We could all have the same grow house, the same lights, the same everything, but different elevation or different barometric pressure, different humidity, different things like that that are outside, as well as even just the way you treat the plants. A lot of people speculate that that has a big part in how they grow. And after harvest, if we all got our buds tested, what would happen is we would pretty much all have a completely different lab test, okay? You might have higher limonene than the person next door, or lower myrcene, or a little bit extra THC. So instead of having 16%, maybe you're at 18, and maybe someone else is at 17.5, and all the numbers are going to be slightly different. So because of that, that's why we explain that strain names don't matter, because there's no consistency in the effect, okay? And also a lot of strain names are counterfeit. You know, I don't know if it's happening so much anymore, but a lot of dispensaries back in the day, they would be like, well, this isn't selling, so let's just call it Blue Dream. All right. And poof, it pops out of the dispensary in no time. So in the sense of that's something we explain in the interpreting program, which is really important to understand. But when we're looking at edibles, I was actually in chat, and Tamara joined in on this as well, and someone asked about, you know, what strain to get. And at the end of the day, what matters is the cannabinoid profile of there. My first response was, you know, it really isn't based off of the terpenes, because through the effects of inhalation, you're combining many different things, and the inhalation of terpenes with cannabinoids does provide different effects across the board for different lab tests and different profiles of terpenes and cannabinoids. But when it comes to an edible, although you may extract some of the terpene, which could impart flavor to your infusion, the primary thing that's having an effect on how it's making you feel is going to be the cannabinoid profile. Primarily, if you're looking at a marijuana strain, we're looking at THC. If you're looking at hemp, you're looking at CBD. And of course, there's all these different ratios in between. So in the world of edibles, and if you're doing an infusion, like you're making a can of ghee or an oil or a tincture or anything like that, I would primarily focus your strain selection on being good quality and making sure that it's lab tested and clean, and that it has the cannabinoid profile that you're looking for. Now, if you're using a particular strain and you're looking to impart the aromatics, because you're going to do a little microplane and make a quick little keef on top, or you're going to use the keef in its whole form, where you can actually smell those aromas, which is going to affect how your dish is experienced, then definitely use your nose at the same time. But again, primarily with an edible, you want to focus on the cannabinoid profile and the lab test, making sure it's clean.
Sure, fantastic. So we're going to just do like a quick speed round on this question. I'm going to come around to each and every one of you, and just wondering what you feel that the biggest myth is about cannabis consumption or edibles. So Chef Brent, I'm going to start off with you.
You can't just throw cannabis in your brownies and expect a good result. They're going to taste terrible, and you know it's not really going to have much of an effect. So you got to learn how to activate it, and then second, we want to make it taste good. So I think that's really important to know.
Okay, and Andrew, I love your new background.
Oh, thank you. Well, I had to take a picture of the plant before I came in. I thought it was important to you know, make sure that the cannabis comes from somewhere and it takes a long time to grow. I think a great myth on that note is that cannabis is an easy plant to produce. Producing quality cannabis is not easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. And we often forget about the people that grow the cannabis in the first place. And there are these amazing botanists and horticulturists that do such a great job. Yeah, that's my myth, that we forget about where the cannabis comes from and how important those people are in the first place.
Wonderful, agreed. And Chef Schopp?
I would say I smoke a lot of flower, so I can handle a big edible or a big dose of edible. I think they're two different things, and again, start small and low and find out what's right for you.
Great, all right, and Chef Unika? Oop, you're on mute, yeah. Nope, you're on mute, there you go.
Oh, sorry, here I am. Sorry, I'm sorry, what was the question? I was trying to answer something in chat.
Just what you think is the biggest myth about consuming cannabis or about cannabis in general that we can put to bed right here today?
I think just that, sorry, I think that one of the biggest myths is that, for me, that I've been dealing with, is that it has to be green in order for it to be potent when it comes to creating an oil or a butter or something along those lines, because people have these ideas of what cannabis infusion looks like to them. So it doesn't have to be a shade of green in order for it to be potent. That's really just chlorophyll that you're looking at. So you don't really want that. It does change the taste anyhow. So that's
all right. Fabulous. And Tamara?
I have two. I'll be really quick. The first one is two terms I'm sure most of you have heard: indica and sativa. Indica and sativa describe the way the plant grows. It does not describe how you will feel. It's the terpene profile and the cannabinoid ratios in combination, plus your unique endocannabinoid system, which is a regulatory system that promotes equilibrium or homeostasis across your body. So that's what you want to be thinking about, the unique smells and tastes and the cannabinoid ratios, not these terms of indica and sativa. They're not helpful for decision making. And the other element I just wanted to address is just the notion of tolerance and the difference between inhaled versus ingested cannabis. So you could be someone who has a lot of experience smoking cannabis or vaporizing it, but that doesn't actually mean that you will have a high tolerance with edible cannabis. So irrespective of your experience with inhaled cannabis, it's recommended that you start with an introductory dose of 2.5 to 5 milligrams. Start low, go slow. You can always eat more, but you cannot eat less. Better to have an experience where you feel nothing than you feel overwhelmed. So for that reason, you should kind of disassociate your experience with inhaled versus edible cannabis.
Sure. Yes. Thank you. Chef David, did you have anything that you'd like to add about dispelling any myths?
I think I have one, and I would like to see what everybody else thinks. I do not believe that cannabis is a gateway drug. I've known people that have indulged in this product and have had no desire into getting into anything harder. A lot of people really enjoy the effects of cannabis and don't want anything else. And I truly believe that's the myth that I stand by.
Okay, well, great. Okay, so let's get into a lot more of these cooking questions as well. So if someone could sort of run me through, I think a lot of times when chefs or cooks are getting into this, they only kind of concentrate strictly on can of butter. But I know there's a lot of other different options when it comes to cooking or baking edibles. And so, Chef Schopp, I see you shaking your head. Did you want to chime in for this?
There's every time I learn something, I realize what there still is to learn. With most of when I'm playing in the kitchen, I am using dab a lot just for convenience. It's readily available and burst it down in a microwave in a little 10-second burst till it just melts in some coconut fat, and then do whatever with it. It's the easiest, cleanest, simplest, no fuss microwave burrito concept that I can find for cooking.
Fabulous. And Chef Brent, could you let us know a little more ways that you also work with your students in Toronto when it comes to getting the cannabis into the different foods that you're producing?
Yeah, of course. So to me, I've been with the company for maybe about 6 months now. And the first time I took a class, I was shocked because I thought it was only can of butter. But what I learned there is that you can infuse not just any fat or oil, so olive oil, MCT oil, coconut oil, you name it, but also you can infuse alcohol. And the way that we do that is I use a siphon gun, so an ISI gun, give it a couple charges of nitrous, and that really helps extract the terpenes. From there, you can put on a double boiler or in the immersion circulator in the sous vide method. So do it about 77 degrees for about an hour, and you're going to extract the cannabinoids that way. Strain that off, then you have an infused alcohol. From that alcohol, you can take that, you could add, say, 10% by weight to sugar, granulated sugar. You'll have something that looks like wet sand. Put that into a dehydrator or into the oven on a really low temperature. Dry that out. It'll be slightly lumpy. You can take that, put it into a food processor or blender, and then sift it, and then you have cannabis-infused sugar. Cup of tea, any dessert you can imagine, you can just substitute that in, macerate some berries, away you go. Vinegars, they'll extract cannabinoids as well. So you can put your flour right into a jar of vinegar, leave it, set it aside. You can do the same thing with alcohol and leave it for a few weeks up to a month. And yeah, so you have now sugar, vinegar. I've done salt where I decarboxylated it. You can make a finishing salt, so like a Malden or a sea salt, of course. And you do that by making a heavy brine or a salt solution, add the decarboxylated cannabis to it, and put that bowl on top of your immersion circulator between 4 and 6 centigrade. And what that's going to do, it's going to slowly evaporate. So overnight, you have to 12 to 18 hours, and you'll notice the salt crystals starting to form. And in there, you'll have your cannabis. So now you have a beautiful, coarse texture finishing salt that's going to add so much texture to steak, chicken, fish, salad, you name it. And it's such an easy way to finish. So to me, when I heard all of this, my mind was blown because that's any food, that's any dish to me. So it's kind of exciting that it is not just a fat, it's anything that you're going to be using in a dish. So ask me any dish, I'll tell you a way you can use it.
That was the golden nugget. You just gave a great golden nugget. Once you figure out salt, when I put that video up, I thought it was going to be the most watched video I had ever made on YouTube, and it barely got any. And it's the secret for so many things. It's so easy. It's so simple.
Yeah, and then and as well, when you have your infusion, then just being able, we do something called oil dropping, where you can just basically take the oil, and then that way, everyone at the party, you make a pasta, you just make your food regular uninfused, buy some lab tested oil, and then, if I like 10 milligrams, I can dose myself, and if Tamara likes 200, she can dose herself, right? So it's, everyone can get what they want, the experience that they want. If someone's got to drive, they don't have to consume it whatsoever. So it's a great way to do it, and it's super simple that way as well. So.
Very cool. And Andrew, how does this play into the beverage world?
Oh, salt, sugar. I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier. It's when you can think about the base ingredient and really just think about one ingredient and where a recipe starts, you can evolve it into so much more. When you figure out how to infuse sugar or a simple syrup, and just a few tricks and tips, soy less thin is a great thing for just getting it to emulsify in water for a little bit, which is incredible. You always need one of those fats. If you take anything out of this, some fat and some heat and some time will do you wonders for infusing. But yeah, when you can create a whole bunch of these pantry items like infused salt, like infused sugar, and then build your layers of flavor on top of them, you can really dive deep. One thing I have on the channel is an infused hot salt, but it starts with making an infused hot sauce, which just starts with making an infused olive oil, which is super, super simple. One thing I'd like to ask everybody about, because we're talking about cannabis strain-specific cooking, nobody's mentioned distillate and distilled cannabis, THC distillate and CBD distillate for cooking, and not actually using cannabis as a flavor, but as just an intoxicant. I'm interested about that.
If I may, currently we use distillate in all our edibles here at Commonwealth Alternative Care. So we have a laboratory that's able to extract that, and I'm able to use it, and it's a really great medium to use. It's great to handle. If you freeze it, it holds really, really well before you add it to your finished products.
Great. Thank you.
I think that the use of distillate in edibles and isolates in edibles is probably across the board what the majority of manufacturing companies are using. And it is really easy to use that when you're infusing for like cannabis dinners or just making, if you get distillate, and it's so much easier to just decarb that if it isn't already, and then go right into your oil infusion. In the cannabis industry, a lot of people talk about the entourage effect, and it was already mentioned. And through inhalation, based off of the research that I've done, the entourage effect is definitely a real thing. But when it comes to digestion, the entourage is primarily going to be based off of those cannabinoids. And just because you have a whole plant extract or a full spectrum product, it doesn't mean that by the time your stomach destroys a bunch of things and the bioavailability decreases to next to nothing for some of these compounds, and it gets metabolized through your liver, that all of those compounds together are going to be doing something. And there is research on isolated compounds, there's research on multiple cannabinoids that are together. But when it comes to looking at, if a flower has upwards of what shows up on a lab test, maybe 4 or 5 different cannabinoids, if that, sometimes, it doesn't mean that all of them are going to be doing something different. With an edible, it's primarily going to be the dominant cannabinoid, and then other cannabinoids that show up in significant amounts, like if you have a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio, something like that. But just keep that in mind that, the distillates, they're not full spectrum to start. They're mainly the primary cannabinoid being THC or CBD, in the sense of what would be considered, again, a normal full spectrum product. But don't shy away from utilizing isolated compounds whatsoever when you're doing these infusions, especially when you're serving the public, because sometimes isolating one compound you have a lot more control over, and especially how a diverse group of people that are going to have different doses, depending on how you're setting up the dinner, they're going to be able to respond to it. So I totally believe in full plant composition and the entourage effect, but I know that it has its limitations, and that what we know about it today is definitely going to change as the research continues. And the industry as a whole has a big, enormous sense that it's got to be a whole plant extract, full spectrum, but there's a big reality that isolated compounds definitely have their place in the entire industry, not just edibles.
I agree with everything that Brandon just said. I just wanted to add a different side of things for myself personally as a chef. One of the things that is very near and dear to my heart is accessibility. And so with regards to distillates, a lot of people, they can be very pricey. They can be expensive. So some people may not have access to those. For me, I am working towards a world where people have the opportunity to grow cannabis the same way they can garden. So I promote that the same way that I promote growing things yourself. So this is the full plant form, and this is how you can make cannabis infused sugar using things around your home, or how you can create a tincture or an RSO without those distillates that are very specific and were something that were things that I couldn't afford when I began the cannabis culinary journey. So.
Sure. And just to follow up on that real quick, are you using anything, a question had come in and it was about male plants and using other parts of the plants that, that they don't typically see in any of the cannabis recipes that they're seeing. So do you have any uses in your culinary experience?
I believe every part of the plant can be used for something. It's just a matter of, your imagination. I think people are afraid to use cannabis for things. The flavors themselves warrant exploration, just to try them with vinegars, with different salts, different sugars, different spices. The seeds themselves. I've seen chefs that I follow in the culinary cannabis world pickle them and use them like you would roe on an oyster. A lot of different applications. It's just something that you have to open your mind up to, but the possibilities are endless.
I think a really nice kind of overall takeaway from this conversation is just the notion that, when we're talking about edible cannabis, none of us are really talking about gummies or cookies or brownies. We're talking about culinary dishes that are enhanced with cannabis. We're talking about finding ways to elevate, fine dining. We're not talking about getting high and getting messed up. We're talking about, fine dining the same way we would be talking about pairing with wine. We're talking about pairing with cannabis strains.
Hey, Tamara, I got a question for you in regards to that vein right there. Let's talk culinary schools for just a brief moment of time. And to me personally, I'm an entrepreneur. I see a huge money-making stream for, be it edibles and culinary cannabis. There's one culinary school that I'm aware of in Canada right now that offers a one-year program on cannabis edibles. Do you see others jumping on board with something along those lines, with obviously help from you individuals as well, who are the experts in this field?
Exactly. So, as at the Cannabis Cooking Company, we are really working to ensure that there are, high quality standards and standards of practice. And we have partnered with a number of higher level academic institutions to help them, incorporate this type of curriculum. And I know that there are a number of colleges and universities that are increasingly starting to include this type of curriculum. But I think that part of the challenge is the persistent stigmas and stereotypes that continue to exist, and the way that they're reflected in the legislature and the associated challenges that presents.
Gotcha.
I've had conversations with technical schools already about it. Also, a year and a half ago, I was talking with a master chef who's an incredible instructor about bringing this to market. So it's right on the horizon. If everybody in this call isn't involved, there's lots of amazing cannabis chefs. It's on the horizon. 2021, 2022, you're going to see a lot of amazing culinary certifications from a lot of incredible schools all over the world. I think this is a globally emerging market that is going to come quicker than you know.
Yeah.
I'd like to follow up with something there if I could.
Please.
So one thing that people need to understand, that to be a cannabis chef, you have to be a chef first. That is the most crucial thing, okay? If you don't know how to properly and safely prepare food for strangers, then you should not be adding psychotropic compounds to it and doing infused dinners, okay? There's two different levels of responsibility for a cannabis chef. One is food and the other is with cannabis, okay? Now, the next thing I'll add to that is I'm not familiar with this school that's offering a year-long cannabis certification or a culinary program, but I can tell you this, all of us on here, we didn't take a year-long cannabis culinary certification, okay? We research incessantly on YouTube, okay? We were reading books. We've read medical journals. We did this all on our own. We are the pioneers of what this industry is, okay? And we didn't have to spend thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars to get a certificate when there's plenty of free information that's out there, okay? So if I hear that there's a culinary school that is doing a cannabis program and they're charging thousands of dollars to teach you how to infuse edibles, I'm gonna lose my hat, okay? It's just like, it doesn't make sense to me. Now, if they're gonna teach you law, they're gonna teach you food prep, and it's a culinary program that just so happens to include things about cannabis, I think that's fantastic. But don't jump to some of the things where people are going to be, oh, we've got this year-long program or 2-year program and you're going to be a master of cannabis. Like you don't need that. And this is my opinion. I don't think that you absolutely need. There's so many resources out there, cookbooks. There's so much free stuff on YouTube. There's small classes that you can spend a couple $100s for. And that's something that Trichome we're working on, possibly with the ACF. And that, I think that some of you also, the chefs here, might have your own courses or things that you're offering, and it's going to cost you a couple $100. Spend that, but don't drop thousands on a cannabis program unless they're teaching you how to cook as well, and it's primarily culinary based.
Gotcha.
Whew, got a little worked up there. Sorry.
No, hey man, I loved it.
And if I could, from my knowledge, that program, it's more like factory manufacturing. So how do you make a product that's shelf stable for 12 months, lab tested, everything like that. So the quality assurance in that, but it is more the processing. And I think, you know, with regards to this call specifically, it's a lot of chefs that are behind the stove for 12 hours a day. That want to learn how to do it. And I mean, that's something that we want to teach people. But yeah, I don't think that sort of program where it's a chef's school first, it's more of a manufacturing program on edibles.
Yeah, without knowing about it, that makes a lot of sense. But anyone who comes across anything that says that you're just going to get taught how to infuse, and it comes with, you know, a big price tag, just be wary of it. That would be my thing. But if it's something specific like manufacturing, there's a lot that goes into that that's not just cannabis related. So that would make a lot of sense.
Agreed. Anything you want to learn on how to infuse is on YouTube. Brandon might have made the video, or I might have made the video, or any other person here probably made the video on any base ingredient, on anything you want to know. It's out there. And if you can't find it, please just ask. We're all very attentive on Instagram, in email. So
excellent. So
I would like to add one
please
thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is in reference to Tamara's comment that that it's not the confectionery and the candies. Here in the United States, when we opened up our dispensary, we specifically didn't add brownies and cookies to our menu. And after a year and a half, it's an overwhelming demand for what these folks want. And it happens to be cookies and brownies. As much as we didn't want to do it, we're almost not forced to do it, but almost 1 out of every 10 customers comes in and asks, why don't you have brownies? Why don't you have cookies? So with the demand that was being requested, we did start making chocolate chip infused cookies, and my God, they've taken off like no other edibles that we have in our facility. So the customer is always right.
Absolutely. And please don't get me wrong. There's certainly a place for, you know, infused desserts of all kinds. And I myself am a huge fan and consumer of them. It's only just to say that the brownies and the cookies tend to feed the typical stoner stereotype. And that's something that I work, you know, to dispel. So that was, you know, my perspective on that. But I certainly am in favor of infusing any and everything.
Excellent.
Do you all? a restaurant chain, for lack of a better term, let's just even call this 5 years down the road. So when cooking with cannabis becomes ubiquitous, do you see a restaurant chain jumping on board in some shape, form, or fashion in cooking with cannabis? And Unika, I would like to hear from you first. You're out in an area where it's completely and totally legal for recreational. And honestly, I would just like to hear what your perspective is on that.
I absolutely could see that. I believe that there are people out there that have geared up for that, and they're just waiting for the opportunity, be it when it opens up as CBD or a wider bit of the spectrum. I do know some chefs out here who have multiple restaurants who have dabbled in, rolling out infused CBD coffees and different beverages, and they've seen mixed success and mixed fines from the government here, but they are trying it. So I definitely see that as probably not even 5 years away, but especially with cannabis being considered essential in our COVID-19 world right now, I think it'll be a lot sooner than 5 years.
Very cool. Chef Schopp, I'm interested to hear your take on this as well, please. Why don't you take yourself off mute?
There we go. Is that better? Yeah, I just had an interesting conversation, and I'd like maybe David to talk about this. I remember him talking about this in a workshop we were at. But I got off the phone with our attorney today. We're working on some projects, and he reminded us, how this thing is still moving and changing every day, and we still can't do anything with the money, even in a legal spot, because it's federally illegal. And even consulting, he warned me, I could go consult somewhere, another state that is legal, ultimately could be liable. So there's a big legality to this and this ever-changing environment. I remember David talking about cash and how to deal with it.
It's unfortunately, unless the federal government gets involved in standardize it across the whole nation, it's going to be difficult, I think, for a restaurant group to get off the ground. There's going to be a lot of restrictions. I know here in the state of Massachusetts, you cannot host a cannabis dinner unless you produce the product on your premises. So if you're using distillate to infuse your product or can of butter to infuse your product, it has to be done wherever the dinner is being held. So there are going to be a lot of stipulations regarding that.
Okay. Now, we've got a lot of individuals on the line from Canada. If I'm not mistaken, I'd say more than 60% of you are. Now, obviously, and I'm not trying to get into laws, US versus Canada, yada, yada, yada. Canada's a bit more progressive, where it's the legislation is completely and totally legal. So Tamara, I'd like to start with you if I could. What do you think needs to happen for more states like Colorado, Washington, Oregon, to jump on the bandwagon of recreational use for cannabis?
I think really they just need a couple loud voices to champion the cause. And I don't have a good sense of how to get anything done in American politics right now, because my view of America is very...
How's that go? Go ahead and try that one more time, please.
I got you guys. I love American politics, and I'm a Canadian, so don't worry about this. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. If you want me to jump in,
please.
Why don't you right ahead, Andrew?
Look at Illinois. Illinois is the best example that we can see on a state level. Very little taxpayer dollars. I think all in all, it was like $1,900 were spent to fully legalize cannabis in Illinois. And what did you see right away? You saw equal opportunity start coming out. You saw people being emancipated from jail. You saw that opportunity going to the most affected communities like Southside Chicago, like people of color. So what needs to happen, and what's really on the horizon, regardless of how the election rolls out in the next election, cannabis is going to be a global economic trading point as all of these things divulge and we have this weird economic break. It's foolish to think that in the next 24 to 36 months, this isn't a massive global economy. And if the United States doesn't federally legalize, then they're not going to be able to compete. If China legalizes legal cannabis production, they will be a worldwide contender. If Japan does it, they will be incredible at it, and they'll have the export knowledge to do it. So I think it's right on the horizon, and we're having great state level examples where we're having decriminalization of psychedelics all the way to complete legalization of cannabis. We're seeing medical programs in states where you never thought it would happen, and CBD sold at gas stations in completely conservative states. So that's my take.
All right.
I'd like to say I agree with Andrew.
There you go. Jackie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you if you don't mind.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to get to everyone. I'm going to come around for everyone for some final thoughts in just a moment. But I did want to address just one thing. There might be some folks on 420 today, and Brandon, I'm going to come to you, who might have overindulged themselves.
Time.
There.
Time. Honestly, there's nothing that will take away your high except for time. There's claims that if you get too high to take some CBD, the way it's being interacted and at different times, it's most likely not going to get rid of your high. You can try it, see if it works for you, but it most likely isn't. With the myths that go around for this, there's a big one. So anyway, time, that's the biggest thing. And if you're overindulging, call your mom. Okay, just call someone, call a family member, call and be like, listen, I am super baked and I need someone to talk to. And I guarantee they'll be like, all right, well, distractions are good, but interactive distractions. Okay, don't sit down and throw on a movie because you'll have too much time to get in your head. You want something that is interactive. So, and that will pass time and calm you down. Now, there's this huge myth in the cannabis industry, which is if you do get too high, then just eat some black peppercorns, because black peppercorns have a terpene in it called beta-caryophyllene, and that beta-caryophyllene reduces anxiety. Well, in a mouse study, they showed that beta-caryophyllene by itself did reduce anxiety in these mice. However, that has nothing to do with THC. Okay, so when you have THC in your system, it is interacting with both cannabinoid receptors, the one, which is mainly in your brain and your central nervous system down your spinal column and sporadically throughout your body, and then your CB2 receptor, which is more in your peripheral and in organs. Okay, so beta-caryophyllene was determined to be a partial agonist of CB2 receptors, and just so you know, chefs, that's recently been debunked. I posted about it on Instagram, you can see it, but anyway. So they say that because beta-caryophyllene is in black peppercorn and it activates this receptor, that it'll reduce the anxiety, but they're totally omitting the CB1 receptor, which is what's primarily causing that intoxicating psychotropic effect, and beta-caryophyllene doesn't touch it, okay? It doesn't do a damn thing to it. So THC is still right in full force until time gets rid of it. But one of the most powerful drugs in the world is the placebo effect. So all these people are chewing on black peppercorns with a gritty, spicy mouth, and they were told that it's going to help them with their high, and therefore it does, because placebo is just amazing. So if you're too high, don't raid the cupboard getting black peppercorns, okay? You're just going to have shitty taste in your mouth. Take a couple deep breaths.
What about taking CBD to counteract your THC high?
Yeah, that's what I said in the beginning. I don't think that I've read the various. There's been studies to show about what happens to THC before, if CBD is consumed before, and then if CBD is consumed after. It actually, in some cases, can prolong the effects because it minimizes the metabolism of the active components going into their half-life metabolite, the one that's inactive that they test for for drug screening. So what's 11 or 9 carboxy THC. So I've heard plenty of people say they've tried CBD over and over and over, and they've said it's done nothing for them. I've tried it before and it's done nothing. But if you do consume them both together at the same time, that will definitely minimize the effects of THC because of that entourage of the two working together. But if you're too high, most likely it's already too late. So deep breaths, do some Wim Hof maybe, take a cold shower, okay? And, just realize that you're gonna be fine. No one has ever died from just cannabinoids by themselves. And, if your heart rate goes up and you get in your head, it's it's just, you're high, man. You'll be all right.
I
Thanks,
just want to add one thing to what Brandon said. I would say the most important element is self-talk. So what you tell yourself in your head. If you tell yourself, I feel messed up, I'm going to die. That is, you know, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you have to continue to message to yourself, I ingested too much cannabis. This will abate. I just need to wait. I feel calm. I'm relaxed. And just that alone is extremely powerful in, you know, in helping you mitigate the overingestion.
And the other thing you can do to prevent it from happening in the first place is what we call the note to self. My partner Max came up with this idea when he was a bud tender, and he would literally have new patients in the dispensary, or tell them to do this later, write a note. Dear Brandon, you smoked weed. Get over it. You're going to be just fine. If you feel too high, take a couple deep breaths, call your mom, play with the dog, get over it, you're cool, love yourself. And then if you get too high, read that and be like, oh yeah, I'm cool.
Yeah, all very good tips, because if you're going to experiment with cannabis and culinary, you're gonna need them. Find a coping mechanism, write it down, you're gonna need it.
Everybody's gonna get too high at some point. It's the learning curve. That's when you realize, oh, 50 milligrams is not the dose for me.
No different than drinking for the first couple times, you know? Don't
mix.
Obviously, we can tell that there's a ton more to talk about, and I do apologize to those who might have been on the chat or some of the folks who had emailed questions in advance that we didn't get to all the questions, but that's because there's so much to talk about. So I think what that really spells out is that we have to do this again. We have to keep the conversation going. We have to keep educating the chefs in the US and now that we see abroad too. And so I do thank you all. I do want all the viewers to stay on just after we do some of these closing thoughts, because I do have an awesome gift for everyone. So if we could, if everyone could go around and I'll call you out, if you could just really briefly, I mean like 30 seconds, just kind of just give us some closing thoughts. If you want to do a shout out to your company or your mom or whatever it is. But just know that we will be including the links to all of your businesses in the follow-up email tomorrow. And we also have had some requests if you all want to email me your favorite recipe as well, that we can include in a little wrap up from this webinar as well. I know the viewers would really love that too. So Chef Brent, if you could briefly just give us your final words.
Sure, and this goes back to the overingestion as well. Broken down the math on making an edible. If you have 1 gram of THC, that's 1,000 milligrams. Let's just say it's 20% THC. Let's say you fully activate it. We always assume a maximum, and you put that into, say, half a pound of butter. Into your cookies goes that full half a pound of butter. You spread that across 20 cookies. You know for fact, max, every cookie could be 10 milligrams. It's probably a lot more like 9 or 8, but at least you know what the maximum level is, and you're never gonna accidentally ingest 200 milligrams, right? When you start drinking, start with a light beer. No one starts with a bottle of whiskey. That always ends poorly. It should be the same thing with cannabis. Start low, go slow, assume the max, just err on the side of safety. That's all I'd say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had muted myself. Andrew, if you wouldn't mind giving us some of your final words.
Yeah, what I would say is that it's a big blue ocean to do things in cannabis. There's so much opportunity in cannabis, and there's so much opportunity in this digital landscape to provide great information, to create an amazing personal brand. And you can do so much with your cell phone. I've connected with so many people today through this cell phone and started such an amazing platform where I get to connect with people all over the world constantly through my phone. So don't forget about the tool that's in your hand and how much you can accomplish with it. And follow me on YouTube, the Cannabis Sommelier. Thanks for having me.
Love it. Okay, Chef David, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to thank the American Culinary Federation for having this webinar. I think the more people that are comfortable with working with cannabis, the more individuals that are going to actually try it. Be careful with your dosages. Actually start low, and then you'll realize what your tolerance is, and then you can move on from there.
All right, wonderful. And Chef Schopp.
I would just say, keep it safe, keep it ethical. Don't mess this up. We've got a good shot at this. Don't hack it. Don't slip somebody a dose because you think they need to try it. Keep everything on, ethical.
Wonderful. And Chef Unika.
Yes, I would just say if you're looking for a place to get started, you don't have any idea how to even begin using cannabis, let the terpenes be your guide. Think of them as herbs and pair them with your dishes in that way. Like we've said, you don't need a lot of cannabis in order for someone to feel something. So just work, do the research. We all have lots of information out there. LuvnKitchn.com is my website. I have lots of recipes and information out there, but let the terpenes guide you initially and learn more about those strains that carry those flavor profiles that you're interested in, and then work from there. That's my piece.
Great. Thank you. And Tamara.
Sorry, I'm just bathed in sunlight here. I think really it's just about respecting the plant and acknowledging cannabis has been around longer than all of us, and it will be around longer than all of us. So we should respect it, we should explore it, we should be thoughtful when we interact with it. And happy 420, everyone. Thanks so much for having me, Jackie, and to the ACF, of course.
Thank you very much. And Chef Brandon, if you could give us some of your final words.
For having us. This has been great. When it comes to my last bit of advice, it would be if you're considering getting into being a cannabis chef and serving the public, however you go about doing that, okay? The biggest thing that I would say is to do you, okay? Don't be the jack of all trades and say you specialize in every cuisine that there is. If you're paleo, stick to paleo. If you're keto, which is how I started, stick to keto. If you're gluten-free, do it. If you're gonna do something like, just meatballs, and that's your thing, is you're known for your Italian meatballs, and do it and stick to it and be awesome at it. So be the best in your lane and stick to what you're comfortable with. Don't be the buffet chef that's preparing stuff for everyone, because it's just gonna stretch you too thin. It's like you go into a restaurant and you see a really tight, small menu and they nail every single one, versus the diner that has 10,000 things on there and everything's like mediocre at best. So I would say that, like, stick to what you're good at. And I'm at Chef Brandon Allen on Instagram. I am with Trichome Institute, and actually, you said you have a giveaway. I'm going to throw another one on top of it just for the people who are viewing, because they spent 420 with us. The first person that follows me on Instagram and sends me a direct message that says ACF is awesome, I'm going to give you free access to the new cannabis consultant training course that Trichome Institute just launched. So you're going to get a $250 course just for hanging out and getting high with us.
Nice.
Anyways, at Chef Brandon Allen. Get to it, first person.
I love that. And for anyone, I actually completed that course over the weekend. It's awesome. So cool. Fabulous to whoever wins that. To my co-host, Chef Rocco, do you have any final words before I announce the big prize? No, you're good?
Oh, sorry. The dog had to come in and make his guest appearance. So please, you take it away, Jackie.
All right. Sounds great. Well, again, thank you all for spending your 420 with us. This has been, as you can see, this panel just has a wealth of knowledge, and I just can't thank them enough for taking their time and for sharing it with the ACF community and beyond. Following this webinar, in your follow-up email tomorrow, you'll be getting a special code so that you can take the exam to earn your Culinary Cannabis Specialized Certificate on the ACF Online Learning Center for free. So we are very excited to offer that to you. So please do be sure to check your emails in the next 24 hours. Again, to all of my panelists, it's been a pleasure. Let's do it again real soon. Enjoy the rest of your 420. On behalf of the ACF and ACF National Office, please be safe and we'll see you real soon. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Chef John.
Happy 420.
Nice to
Happy
see you.
420.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.